Good evening. Welcome to this workshop of the Hopkins School Board. We have a 2-hour workshop this evening, and then our regular meeting will begin at 7 p.m. We have 2 agenda items for our workshop, our superintendent goals and our 24-25 school year calendar. Before we get started, we typically do this at our meeting, but we have a new wonderful person joining us at the table tonight. And so, Grace, would you do the honors of introducing our newest board rep?
I would love to. So this is Praise. She is our newest addition to the school board student rep program, and she is a junior this year. And then Mia is our chair cohort, but we are very, very happy to have Praise.
Fantastic. Welcome, Praise.
Hello.
Praise. Hi. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Looking forward to hearing your report during the meeting and getting to know you and work with you. So
Yes,
thank you.
me too.
Yeah, and feel free that our workshops are more informal in nature, so if you have something to add to the conversation, please do.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll move into our first agenda item, which is our superintendent's goals.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland, and I'll get set up. And while we're doing that, what I'm hoping for from our board members is I put some Post-its and a pen near you. If you wouldn't mind just taking about 60 seconds of independent think time and write down 3 superintendent/system goals that you are hoping are included on the list. 1 in the area of learning and teaching, 1 operations, and 1 culture. And then at the end, hopefully we'll see lots of alignment, but if not, then it's a good way to have some conversation.
Can you remind us of the 3 areas?
Sure. Learning and teaching, school and district culture, and operations. Anyone need more time? Okay. You good, Director Peterson?
Yeah.
Okay. I love how engaged you were in that. All right. So I'd like to start at a high level and just well, first of all, greet any community members who may be listening in, and hello to all of you board members. Thanks for being here for this. And just remind our board members and folks listening in that in Hopkins, we have a high level and bold vision that we call Vision 2031, and then we have paired that with a very detailed strategic plan that specifies projects and deliverables within each of 3 goal areas and how we will make progress against these deliverables between now and 2031. So our 3 goal areas are learning and teaching, that every early learning through grade 12 plus, and whenever you see that plus sign after the 12, we're talking about transition plus, so we want to be inclusive of those students. Every E through 12 plus classroom will move toward concept and inquiry-based personalized learning that activates literate, critically conscious behaviors undergirded by wellness and restorative practices. And then there's an equity commitment within that goal to have a bias toward action and interrupt some of the patterns that are harmful to our students or have impacted our students in disproportionate ways. And then our school and district culture goal is that we will increase wellness by building a workplace culture that is safe and caring. We will increase trust, share power, and ensure people are of equal worth. Then our operations goal is to identify gaps or flaws that prevent employees from doing their jobs efficiently or effectively. There's an empathy commitment in the culture goal and an innovation commitment in the operations goal. So our strategic plan, and here's a snapshot of the strategic plan, has between 20 and 40 projects or deliverables. We use those terms interchangeably within each goal area. And every one of these line items, every one of these projects has a project charter with a project sponsor and a project manager. And we meet every Wednesday to go over a certain segment of this strategic plan. So we will meet, for example, we'll meet on a Wednesday to do half of the culture goals, and then the next Wednesday we'll do half of the operations goals. The Wednesday after that we'll do learning and teaching goals. So tomorrow, as an example, we're meeting to review goals 1 through 20 projects 1 through 20 in our learning and teaching goal. So does that make sense in terms of how we're setting ourselves up for moving toward achieving all of the projects in these 3 goal areas? So then I just wanted to also provide you as board members with a snapshot of a project charter. So this is an example of a project charter, or it's like a plan, really, around the deliverable teacher as facilitator, students as agents of their learning. So in Hopkins, we're moving away from teacher centered teaching and learning towards student-centered teaching and learning, which really requires our teachers to shift shift from being seen or experienced as sage on the stage and move toward a facilitator or coach of active learning in all classrooms. And then this project charter details what are all of the moves at the leader level, at the school level, that are designed to help teachers make this shift. So this is an example of a project charter for one deliverable. And then this is an example of a tool that our Innovation, Design, and Learning Department has created to help us make that shift from teachers to facilitators of learning. So this tool is called an Innovation Configuration Map, and it's very similar to a rubric, except it's very growth-oriented. And what it does is it details what teacher moves look like at the ideal level and what they look like at the emerging level. So as a teacher, you can do like a self-assessment on where you are in that shift. So learning facilitator, moving our teachers toward acting as learning facilitators in the classroom is a big thing that we're working on in Hopkins this year. So then, obviously, my job as the superintendent is to create the conditions where this work can be done, but also to create the structures so that there's a way for people to engage in the work and to also engage in progress monitoring. And then, in addition to that, I thought for each of the 3 goal areas, I would call out the most important deliverables within each of these goal areas that I myself want to pay special attention to, or that I feel I should play a big role in having these things get done. So for learning and teaching, there are, and this is maybe where you want to check my thinking with your thinking, and then we can have some time for feedback at the end, because all of this can be adjusted. But there are 5 bullets that I included for learning and teaching, and one is supporting our Director of Innovation, Design, and Learning in bringing HILT to its next level of effectiveness. So HILT is our Hopkins Instructional Leadership Team. It's a group of about 70 people that meet in this space once a month, principals, instructional coaches, teacher representatives, data specialists, and others. We meet once a month, and what we're doing in that space is we're learning different components of that learning facilitator innovation configuration that I just showed you. And so what we have talked about is that HILT is our first mechanism toward helping all of our teachers and buildings engage in this shift. And, you know, like, and I feel like already I'm using a lot of jargon, because I was going to talk about a theory of action. But essentially, like, we've asked ourselves, well, you know, like, what is the clearest way to explain how we will support and help our teachers in making this shift? And we, you know, there's actually a science behind articulating what your plan is, your theory of moving from status quo or current reality to the ideal state, and then kind of building the mechanisms to move in that direction. So we're really leveraging HILT as one of those mechanisms for change across our buildings, because there's such strong representation from all of our schools at those monthly meetings. And then what happens is every principal is expected to have a building instructional leadership team, or BILT, where 1 or 2 weeks after HILT, then the building team discusses all that was learned at HILT, and then they decide, okay, how are we going to bring this to staff in a staff meeting? And so that's sort of the cycle of adult learning that we're trying to systematize across our district. Okay, so the second bullet is redefining and implementing school-wide talent development as supported by redefined scholar success metrics. So our principal and special assignment, Dr. Leanne Camphy, is working with principals, mostly right now at the elementary level, to be really clear on what is the holistic set of instruments we're going to use to identify students' gifts and talents, and how will students' talents be developed throughout the school day, and how will teachers be equipped with the skills to be able to do that. So before, like, we've heard a lot of parents talking about, you know, how we sort of took away gifted and talented. The reality is that the gifted and talented opportunity that we had at the elementary school level a few years ago was math It was a pull-out math for a very small subset of students that had been identified using a very narrow set of traditional measures. And so we are wanting to broaden those measures, make them more holistic, and to ensure that that many students and students who represent our total population benefit from having their gifts and talents be developed and cultivated. And so part of her assignment this year is to help us internally get really clear on what that looks like, and also help our parents understand what that looks like. And then you'll have a chance to engage with Dr. Abby Holm, our instructional data scientist, who's been doing a lot of work around redefined scholar metrics, knowing that in the past, the MCA is one of the primary instruments that was used to measure student learning, and we want to have a suite of tools and diagnostics that we use to gauge how our students are learning, both academically and also in terms of their social and emotional competencies. So that's what that second bullet is, and I see myself in playing a significant role in making sure that this work gets done this year. And then that third bullet is big, right? Bless you. But being much more data focused around how we discern the improvements that we're making with academic achievement. So specifically, I just sat in this morning on a data cycle that our innovation design and learning team was having, but specifically we want to use FastBridge to gauge reading foundation skill development for kindergarten through grade 3 students. We want to look at achievement at the 6th through 8th grade level using IB scores disaggregated by grade and race. And then, of course, we want to look at our course passing rates and grade point averages for our 9th through 12th grade students, track college applications, and also graduation rates. So those are just, I wanted to be specific about some of the things that we are wanting to measure. And want to be thoughtful about including in the last bullet, which are the data visualizations that will be available to our internal teams and also to our external audiences. And then the fourth bullet is the gauging growth in things like social awareness and emotional wellness as measured by Panorama. So when I looked at all of the things that we're doing in learning and teaching, I wanted to identify, what's happening here? I wanted to identify the items that I think generate a lot of conversation in our community, items that are very important for student learning, items that are very important to report to you as a school board on. So I'm just going to pause here to see if there's any questions on any of these.
What's the timeline for the data cloud and data visualizations? Thinking mostly about that external rollout.
So we do have a data dashboard on the website right now, one that has learning and achievement data and one that has some staffing data, and those we don't have the mechanism right now to update them in real time. So the goal is to update them twice a year, but also to kind of make sure that what they're depicting represent the most important things that we want to communicate. And then the Hopkins Data Cloud, that is something that's being launched in the early part of this school year. So Abby and the data team is working on it right now. And so what that is it's kind of like a suite of data dashboards for our principals and our teachers who sit on the principals' leadership teams, teachers who meet and meet on the SAT team, student assistance teams. So it's a suite of data visualizations to help leaders and school staff in a school look at how their kids in that school or at a certain grade level are doing according to the measures that have been identified.
Would you consider doing a podcast episode on holistic assessment and the scholar success metrics?
Oh, yes.
I think that would be great.
Yeah, that'll for sure be, that's a big topic. So how does this compare with what you wrote on your Post-it around maybe a learning and teaching or learning and achievement goal that you hoped would be one of the focus areas? Did we get it right, or do you have some different ideas?
You hit one of mine, which was school-wide enrichment, which I think is the school-wide talent development. And are we getting close to it being fully inclusive of all learning styles? And I was just wondering, too, when you were speaking specifically to that, I just wanted to clarify, I don't know if I didn't hear all of it, but my understanding from my experience in Hopkins is that we didn't just offer gifted and talented math. There was a wide range of topics previously, at least that my kids participated in. So I'm wondering, is that
In
on the radar?
elementary?
Yes.
Okay.
So is that not something that's been replaced by anything, or
So
is it just math?
the way that we were accelerating students in math was done in a pull-out model, and that accelerated pathway was exclusively focused on math. Now, maybe there were some other, like, cross-disciplinary kinds of things that were infused into regular classroom teachers' lessons, but my understanding is that it was primarily math acceleration in a pull-out setting that was identified as something to reimagine. So when your kids were in elementary school, do you remember what they experienced?
Yeah, they were part of, and it was a pull-out model as well, part of a language arts gifted and talented that included several different session type things. And then for the latter one, after we implemented Spanish, there was also Spanish.
Okay,
So just, yeah.
okay.
It's just something I was curious about. 'Cause when I
Okay,
heard you say
maybe
math,
there's
I
been a
was like,
few
oh, there were
evolutions.
Other
Mhm.
opportunities. So just had a question as to what happened to that.
Okay. So there might have been some evolutions. So what principals and our instructional coaches and IDL team is working on now is a holistic way of assessing students' gifts and talents and capacities, and then building into the school day opportunities for many, if not all, students to rotate through opportunities to, engage in like robotics or engineering, STEM-based programming. I think what would be ideal is if there was some skill development that was infused also into the regular classroom setting, right? Where whether it's infused into our SEL curriculum for some of the SEL talent development experiences that used to occur for a smaller subset of students, for all of our students to experience that. So right now, what's happening is there is an approach that's been identified at each of our elementary schools, and we want to be clear on exactly, what the content is, what are the skills being developed, and what is the schedule that allows many, if not all, students to rotate through those experiences, and just being really crisp and clear with all staff and with parents about what that looks like.
Okay.
In addition to reimagining concept-based math and working on the literacy development as well.
Great.
Will the talent development offerings be different at each site, or like slightly different with kind of like a unifying approach that undergirds it across the
I think that's a
district?
good question. I think the goal is to have some shared ideas around the skills and the competencies that we want to develop, and then maybe the vehicle might look slightly different school to school. But I think what would also be helpful is a workshop topic, so we can hear a lot more detail on how this is developing. Were there any other feedback or any other gaps between what I presented and what you wrote down or thought of?
I think that I mentioned a lot of opportunities for professional development and support for our teachers' growth. And it sounds like I potentially meant in some specific teaching methodologies. However, it's absolutely applicable and important that all staff members' understanding of where we're going grows, and that they have a lot of opportunities, it sounds like, to receive that information from the leadership teams.
Yeah, I would say that the premise under all of this is that there would not be an expectation that teachers do something differently without that having the opportunity to learn it first. And then the kind of the framework that we're using to manage our own and others' expectations and provide kind of a way to engage in the change process is called the ADKAR model, ADKAR. So it's building the awareness and the desire before building the knowledge base of teachers, before developing abilities, and then a way to kind of repeat or reinforce those behaviors. So it's awareness to reinforcement and trying to be really thoughtful about the adult learning process within that. So always lots of PD. In fact, we have to be really creative about how we leverage all of the time that we have, because there's more need than actual time allowed.
For me, the most concerning thing is classroom sizes. And I do know still at the high school level, we do have really large classes, and teachers naturally are not able to reach all students because, there's so many students and only one teacher. And also, I feel I'm subbing lately in a lot of our schools, so I feel from what I've seen, with my boots are on the ground and I'm able to go into classrooms. And from my personal professional opinion, I feel like we do need more paras in the classroom, and that we do need smaller classroom sizes. So I do hope that you can incorporate that into your goals.
I agree. And just trying to think here. So one of the things that I want to hold myself accountable to is related to your comment, is on the next slide, around school and district culture. So the second bullet is increasing representation in a collaborative budgeting process. So we have had many, many conversations with our teachers. Also, here, as long as we're on the topic, here's a slide just that I was going to include in the superintendent update around, so this gives you an idea of the percent of courses or sections that have 25 or fewer students, 25 to 30 students,
Right.
31 to 35, 36 to 39.
Right.
So while the majority of our secondary courses have 35 or fewer students, to me, even that 25%
Right.
is not an acceptable number.
Right.
And you'll hear teachers say, it's not always the sheer number, it's also, who's in that space, how large the space is, and what the needs of the students are in the space.
True.
But I did share with our union president and with teachers that we are in a reality that is not ideal with, at least with those courses and the teachers who teach those courses. And so it's something that we are committed to working as hard as we can to address right now, but also building a collaborative budgeting process as well as staffing allocations for next year that generate a different reality.
Right. And from
Because
what I-
because it's hard, right?
Yes.
If we're going to ask our teachers to try new ways of facilitating learning, then we have to create the conditions where they're not feeling stressed, where they're feeling, like they are able to easily try new things or absorb new information.
Right, and especially at the elementary level, I've seen that although quite a lot of classroom sizes are small, there are teachers who don't have those paras in the room, and there's students who are still, the students who were being schooled at home during COVID. And those students are struggling to still adjust to a regular, normal classroom style of teaching. And so those students need that extra para-professional to be in the room. And unfortunately, a lot of those elementary level teachers don't have those paras and that support. So, yeah, I hope that'll be addressed, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly we can't afford a paraprofessional for every classroom, but we do need to identify where that extra support is needed
Right.
and see what we can afford. So thanks for bringing that up. So can we move to the culture goal then? Okay. So the first bullet is the role that I would play in just supporting Dr. Lightfoot and a revitalized HR staffing structure that he has been working on with his team to orient our district-wide culture to be one that is strength-based, one that really focuses on employee wellness and employee engagement, and figuring out what are the conditions that we need, but also the structures that we need to improve and increase our onboarding practices. So we have a lot of aspiration in our in the work that our HR team would do, and he has worked with that team on identifying a structure that we hope will move us from our current reality to some of the, if you read through the strategic plan, then there's quite a few culture deliverables that are related to employee wellness, employee engagement, professional development, employee support, all with the idea that we've got to figure out how to retain, how to hire great people and retain our wonderful people. So that's the first bullet. The second I referenced a little bit ago is increasing representation in a budgeting process that in particular our teachers feel is more collaborative and more transparent. Right now on Thursday mornings when we have our budgeting meetings, it is principals, some assistant principals, all of cabinet, and a few other district leaders. We do have a couple of school staff, for example, a couple of data specialists, but we want to, and it's hard when you meet during the day when teachers are teaching, but we do want to move toward a process where teachers see themselves in that budgeting process and in the decision-making that happens at the district and the school level. The third bullet is we've talked on our team about shifting Dr. Stanley Brown's role to sort of embodying more of an ombudsperson for our district. And the idea is that if we have either staff or students or families who find themselves embroiled in a conflict that just either feels very complex or layered, or they've lost trust with the district or the school staff, and they want a neutral space to be able to just talk about what happened and a way to move forward, that we have a person devoted to that work, and that in other spaces is called an ombudsperson. And so we haven't yet introduced it to all of Hopkins. I wanted you to hear about this first. Principals have heard about it. Of course, Cabinet has looked at this, and then we're hoping, it's not a huge shift because it's just maybe bringing a new purpose into Dr. Brown's role, but it would be a new service that we would provide our staff and hopefully help create the conditions where we're increasing trust and ensuring people feel that they have extra worth, which is part of that goal statement. And then you've talked, or you've heard us talk about the subbing need. Director Khan just talked about being in buildings and subbing. Thank you. I didn't know you were doing that.
I love it. Yeah.
That's cool. But we also, as district leaders, want to increase trust and also increase our understanding of all of the school-based work that our staff are engaging in every day, which then once you're increasing your understanding, you have an opportunity to, develop genuine empathy for how challenging it can feel or be to be in some of our environments. Obviously, it's also a calling for all of us, but once you move, so I was a teacher and then I was a principal, and then after transitioning fully to a district office role, you have to make a concerted effort to be in school buildings and to be in classrooms and to really see and remember what that life is like, right? So it's wonderful work, but it can be very challenging. And so subbing is one way that we are engaging in a more visual, observable partnership with our schools. And we're also in the kind of emerging stages of a mentoring program. So Dr. Tate at our high school is working with Alex Fisher and myself on this opportunity to identify some higher need students who could benefit from a trusted adult, maybe outside of the school, and then a few of us would be paired with a student and get some mentoring training and then, be able to help in that way. And then the last bullet is our district holistic school safety plan. So I'm the project sponsor for this deliverable. We have a consultant who's also a parent in the district, Chris Carr. He is a safety and security expert. And he has a contract with Hopkins Public Schools to lead our district holistic school safety team. Nick Torero, Fonda's assistant director, Brian Stanley, John Wetter. There are a few of us who sit on the district holistic safety team, and then we have a whole sort of project charter around the safety and security installments that we, want to start enhancing in our schools. So that's very important work as well. So how does this compare to what you wrote down for culture? Any different topics or ideas that weren't mentioned?
So mine was, I think it will be addressed by the ombudsperson role, and so I'm excited about that. It wasn't a goal, it was more of a problem, but the thing that I think culturally that we've really struggled with is while trying to create a really open communication model, that's translated into almost like when teachers go directly to families without addressing the district. And then they create like this firestorm amongst the parents. I think that really negatively affects our enrollment and the impression of the district. And I don't think that that's the teacher's intent, but hopefully we can really get our teachers engaged with this ombudsperson role so that when they do have these grievances, rather than alerting a firestorm amongst our students and families, like we saw with music and like we saw with gifted and talented, it's the teachers who are very passionate, but perhaps their communication is more destructive than constructive. And so that was the one I was trying to figure out what that goal would look like. And I feel like the ombudsperson role could be really helpful there. But it's just making sure that maybe that goal would be addressed with that role. To like have teachers feel like they have a safe place to go before firing up our community, especially when we're talking about, preliminary budgeting and before we have final budgeting. Like with the case of the music program, I think it was really difficult because it was preliminary budgets, and we were just, so I just, that one I think just has such a huge impact on our culture, and I'm just not sure if that role will address it, but I hope it will.
I don't know, that's a good question. So some of the examples that we had in mind when we were thinking through what this role would do versus wouldn't do were topics that were more narrow or event specific. For example, like a very specific conflict between, I don't know, like a teacher and a principal or a parent and the district versus an issue that multiple teachers feel impacted negatively by. And I think the question that I'm always wondering is, because we do, from my vantage point, we offer so many opportunities for folks to say what's going well and say what feels challenging. With the hopes to understand those things, but also so that there is a space so that we're not like having to, sort of take it external. So I do think it's worth a conversation, like what are some missing structures, or what could be some really cool ways for that listening and that dialogue to take place internally.
Yeah, because in both of those cases, they felt really like almost, they felt it was urgent, but in actuality, there was just a lot of planning and discussion. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe there's even a way for it to be like, there's somebody at the school that can maybe take on a role that works with Stanley, right? But would like to take point on some of those communications or something, right? Like a school-based ombudsperson that can help translate some of that.
Maybe with a clear protocol. Like, we don't want to be top-down, but this is the highly suggested protocol we want all of us as employees to follow.
Yeah.
And there's like 6 steps before you go to parents.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, right? I mean,
Right.
I just don't think that teachers realize how destructive that is in the trust between, when all we've been trying to do is build trust, and then they just like, I feel like, you know, we do 3 steps forward, and then one communication like that just takes us even further than we were before.
Right.
Well, and I think another layer there was the use of school district resources to spread information that was not accurate.
Yeah.
And so thinking about like how we use our resources, what that looks like. And so that's why I like the systematized approach. And at the same time, like really honoring and valuing what those teachers had to say and what their perception was of what was happening at the time, because it felt really scary and really rooted in a scarcity context. And so,
Or felt hierarchical.
yeah, absolutely, which is like how our systems are set up and what we're trying to, to undo, right? So, yeah, I like the idea of brainstorming some ways to deepen that collaboration and have just sort of like the parameters be really clear about what those conversations look like, and then looking at how board members might be involved in that as well.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that it's just so rooted in our culture, and we're trying to be open and collaborative, and we just need to make sure everybody feels that open collaboration. So, and yeah, maybe that's an interesting point, Jen. Maybe moving forward, those school assignments, right? Maybe there's a way for those board members, but then again, maybe it feels hierarchical. I don't know. So just sort of the one thing I've seen from both like my first months on the board and my last couple. That one's kind of been pervasive.
Yeah, that's good, though. Thank you for calling that out. Anything else that you wrote down that fits in this kind of culture space that you want to name?
I think this one could sort of fit into all three. And this probably merits a workshop conversation of its own, but the implementation of restorative practices. So we were talking about the implementation of the holistic school safety plan, and obviously those things are related. Been hearing from some teachers and parents and caregivers that just the expectations around like what restorative practices look like in terms of accountability are not super clear. And, you know, I think there's a misperception that a restorative culture is like discipline light or, you know, like no accountability. And that's not true. It's a very deep, meaningful relationship-based way of maintaining accountability to each other. And so I think like to Rachel's point, professional development is needed there. But also just like clearer communication about what are the tools at staff members' disposal when a conflict arises. Because I think there's some confusion, like, oh, we can't do it the old way, but I'm not quite sure what's all involved with the new way. And then communication with parents and caregivers as well, because it is a total paradigm shift. And it's really easy for that misinformation to kind of fly around.
Ditto. Yeah, I totally agree. I think restorative culture gets gets a bad name based on a lot of people who try and make it as a lack of discipline
something that's
versus
weak.
a relationship building approach.
Thank you.
I'll just jump in here with a different context that was really helpful for me. I kind of bristle at the word discipline, and I think we all have more of a negative connotation to it. But when we were, I was watching something and having a conversation afterwards, and discipline can be seen as a positive trait, that you are a disciplined individual, which means that you are able to kind of self-regulate and to act in accordance with your character, right? That we can see a disciplined person as that. And so it allowed me then to shift my perspective of restorative practices actually are a great way to create and to build in discipline into our entire community and culture. So I think it's just a shift in how we look at it, because don't we all want our kids to have that within themselves, the ability to do that? And I think restorative practices directly teach that to our community as well as our students in the schools.
That's so interesting, because it's like, it's a relational form of discipline versus
Right.
a top-down compliance form of discipline, right?
It's guiding individuals to be disciplined instead of imposing discipline upon them so that we feel comfortable. The difference is we want the individual to be comfortable.
And define what that looks like.
Right.
Yeah, that shared definition.
For them.
Yep. Yeah.
It was very helpful for me. I've stopped bristling at the word now.
Well, it's kind of like the Hopkins graduate traits. So Chair Westmoreland, like you said, can we be explicit about the restorative culture and practices like the toolkit that teachers and other staff have at their fingertips? Like, what are all the tools that teachers and staff use to engage in restorative practice? And maybe can we explicitly name the attributes of our students when they become masterful at responding to or engaging in or facilitating restorative practices?
Yeah.
I like that. Well, it all should be part of our district-wide framework. So we have a restorative culture, like district-wide coordinator, and I think what I don't know are, like what are all these things that she's building in the framework so that we have a way to systematize these tools and these practices and expectations across all schools. So I think that's another potential workshop topic.
And that is one of the goals, too, of our student code of conduct policy, is ensuring that we are consistent across the district in implementation of that plan, so.
Correct. Okay. Okay to move on. So then the last piece here is, so we talked about our learning and teaching goal, our culture goal, and then we have an operations goal. And this is where we really think about all of the kind of infrastructures and the processes and the platforms, I think also in ways of being that help people be efficient or effective in their jobs across the district. So probably one of our biggest deliverables is implementing the enterprise resource planning system. So that's our HR and business intelligences, and also there is like a learning management system, LMS component that Oracle offers. So this implementation is a 2-year process and has really involved every single member of our HR and business offices staff to date, and then some members of our IT department as well. As an ERP steering team, we meet every Wednesday at 2 o'clock to talk about sort of the work that's been done or will be done within the coming week, and it's very much an all hands on deck project that our staff and colleagues have to figure out, like, how do they devote significant chunks of time every day to this work while also doing like all the other stuff they were doing before. So it's a big endeavor. With our transportation challenges that we have had, certainly this past fall, and as we see that the needs of our families are, not consistent or static. We have lots of unique needs in our district. We are engaging in the lab operating system to better understand what is in our system that prevents us from being agile and responsive to the needs of some of our more vulnerable populations, students who qualify for McGinney-Vento services, students in foster care, students with IEPs, our early learning scholars who may, go to Harley for a morning class or an afternoon class, but maybe not all day, right? So what is getting in the way of quickly ensuring that every scholar who needs transportation has it? And, how do we learn what those barriers are and then make some corrections so that we can improve over time and also have a much transformed experience for next fall. So that's another big thing that we're working on right now. You've also heard about the partnership that we have with Fielding International. That's the architectural firm that is also an education thought leader across the globe. And then SiteLogic is another firm that we have had a long-standing relationship with our operations teams to determine, if and when we're going to go out to our community for a referendum to support the future forward learning spaces in our schools, to support the safety and security enhancements that are needed, and to support gender neutral bathroom development, things like that. So that's another work stream that's in the operations space. And then finally, something that Director Contreras would be very elated to know that the equity rubric, the equity analysis tool, Fond has been on my case, right? So what we sometimes do in this district and in all public school systems, maybe in the post-secondary world too, like people working in silos.
Oh, no, we never do that
Oh,
in
okay.
post-secondary.
And maybe not talking to each other across departments or
We
silos?
always do that in post-secondary.
Okay. So the idea is that we use an equity analysis tool or rubric that helps ensure that not only have we thought about the needs of any specific student populations or vulnerable student populations, but that we're thinking about the needs of the adults who are going to play a role in helping some kind of complex effort get done, right? So that school staff are talking with nutrition services staff, or the enrollment team is talking with transportation, right? Like, what is the tool that helps us think about all facets of the system and work together so that, we don't launch and try to implement something and then it's like, oh, we forgot to, have our custodians at the table, and yet they need to figure out how to effectively clean the pavilion and virtual EDU space every day for our staff and students, just as an example. So that's something that we've been wanting to get better at for a long time now, and I'm hoping that using this, like systematizing the use of this tool will help us.
Do you have one?
We do.
Okay.
We do. I can share it with you. You can take a look. It was, we adopted one from 287, and then also from MDE had some equity analysis kinds of questions that we included in the tool that we developed.
'Cause I was
Is that right, Fonda? 287 and MDE, right?
Well, the first one, the one that's kind of on top, came from our groups when we were ideating for how to look at Vision 2031.
Okay.
There was a committee in 2018 that met for those 6 Mondays in the evening for a few hours. And they wondered, should it be a separate group? Why? Because they wondered, should it be a part, should the equity work be a part of each group that was ideating? But it ended up being a separate group. And so then they said, how can we make sure, what would the product be, and how can we make sure all groups were using it?
Okay. Thank you. So anything that you as board members wrote down on your Post-its that you think is important and you don't see here on the operations slide?
I mean, I just stated kind of a holistic transportation review, so not just necessarily with special services, but just knowing that, and maybe you can, are we contracting with MTN for regular bus routes now too, in addition to, okay. So I assume there's some of that, but as a goal, just maybe for a holistic overhaul, or maybe there's consultants who can help us address some of the issues we face as a district as far as our size goes too. I think that's, I don't know, dig in our heels a little bit on that issue.
Yes. Well, maybe we can start with just a board update to give you a level of detail and then kind of go from there. But there's, Truro spends a lot of time in transportation services. Our interim supervisor, Naisha Williams, really smart lady, working really hard to, I think, identify and like protect what's working well, but also understand. And it's, like some of the reasons why we had faulty service this fall were not just because of transportation, right? There are many other departments, whether it's our microsystems in IT not talking to each other, being understaffed in enrollment, very tedious form situation, filling out forms and having multiple hands filling out, there's some other things at play, and we're working on that understanding, but I'd like to be able to have the board get a good overview as well.
Perfect.
I think to expand on that idea of really getting a systemic understanding of what caused various issues, I had written down specifically agile and responsive, and I also used the word modern about system-wide communications, and I don't mean just MARCOM necessarily, but to streamline kind of the ways in which perhaps our teachers communicate. That's one aspect that has been brought up at the board table so far today. Potentially the ways in which parents know that they have either activities that they can join, or their students can, or potentially if they have an onus to finish something by a particular timeline. To me, it seems to fit the operations, the larger goal of identifying and addressing systems or gaps that prevent employees from doing their jobs efficiently. Because it does seem as though, especially if something happens to go wrong, and little things do go wrong in microsystems, then it is not always clear, either as a professional in the system or as a parent or even a student, and potentially our students could have some insight into this. What do we do about that? And then that confusion causes a person to get dozens of emails, or for a phone line to literally not be able to handle the traffic. And so I know that that is an issue kind of that I have talked about. But it seems that it at least plays a role in at least several of these. And I think that specifically with like the ERP implementation, I've seen quite a bit of systemic communication about that. So in certain aspects, of course, it's done very well here. We have examples of brilliance with it, and then also some examples where could use some current, I don't know. I don't want to say current thinking about it, but possibly an identification of what impact our practices have.
So, Director Hartland, are you suggesting a specific work stream or bullet around nimble communications? Or like if you had to kind of name like where the work would be concentrated, would it be in activities and athletics, or would it be in communications, or what, or both?
That is a good question. I am not positive that I'm prepared to answer that extremely cohesively at the moment. For example, we will, as a part of engaging with fielding site logic and district operations towards setting the stage for future referendum, communicating strategically and in multiple channels and with several audiences will absolutely be a piece of that. And so I can really see the need for at least its kind of overt consideration in all of these that you have mentioned here. And then I know separately we have an upcoming workshop around activities and kind of communications for our family members. And then I know that at this board table, we've just discussed, there's something helped create conditions where our teachers are communicating in these channels with our externally. And so that is more of a commentary on, to me, it appears as a topic that needs consideration kind of with all of our goals. And again, to reiterate that.
Oh, like communication is a intentional, like, tangent or
Yes.
offshoot of each of these, sort of? Is that what
Yes,
you
and-
mean?
Yes, and it was brought up a bit with this equity rubric to ensure that cross-functional operations efforts are engaged with all critical voices at the table. And I think specifically kind of calling out, even if they're one step further, even if they're not literally at this table, who's being impacted, and how will we communicate that? And does our current plan for communication have any results that we are unhappy with and that we could potentially improve?
Yeah, I guess for me, I think about how communication around a potential referendum is going to look very different from both internally and externally from, communication around busing issues. So thinking about whether we want to look at this as like an overarching sort of communication strategy, or if it is, like, as you suggested, just making sure that communications is kind of embedded into each of these areas. I just wanted to name that, like, the communication strategy for some of these things is going to look very different.
Sure, and involve different people.
But needs to be an intentional aspect of each. Well, the feedback is really helpful. I'm glad to know that there's some alignment between my thinking and your thinking, but I was also grateful to hear kind of what additional ideas you had when you thought about what's most important in each of these goal areas. One thing that we have to get better at as a team, and maybe also at this table, is also celebrating like all of the things that are going well or that we have achieved. Because sometimes it's hard to forget that, oh, wow, like we've done, like if you just kind of make a list of all the things that we've accomplished in partnership with many of our stakeholders, then it's a really long list. So to kind of have a balance between like, yay, and to fix, the to-do list.
Well, I think about, just something like student success metrics, where we started and what we were using to measure success, right? And where we are now, it's night and day. And so, I think one of the great kind of byproducts of this conversation around your goals is potential workshop topics for us in the winter and the spring, which will be great for our new board members who are joining us too, to be able to give input and get up to speed on some of that. So I've been making a list of potential workshop topics and just wanted to make sure that this captured what we talked about here. So talent development implementation, student success metrics, holistic school safety and restorative culture implementation, transportation update. Does that feel?
I feel like you could also add the buzz person.
Oh, yeah.
You could add that because if you look at slide 2, the ombuds person could probably answer some of the transportation issues. Are any of like communication for the transportation? They would have a seat at the table for the collective budgeting process that would help. Then, like, they could intercept if they're starting to feel like there's some discontent among some of the individuals there at, I was just looking at this, and that's basically, I was like, that individual would probably touch all of this stuff. It will be probably seen as like a chief of staff in the private sector, where this person is independent, kind of touches everything and kind of like spearheads some of their ideas. But I would probably be the only thing I would add is the ombuds person, or their role, and basically they would almost be like Dr. Mary Puri's shadow to kind of understand, like, all right, what's going on? Let me see if I can get out there and communicate, the parents or whoever the audience is, students, teachers.
Yeah, and thinking about those process elements that we talked about earlier, what does working with the ombuds person, I have such a problem pronouncing that. It was like my brain
Strange
just
word.
freezes when I see it. I'm like, ombuds person, sound it out. Support the new ombuds person. And what that looks like. I was thinking as you were talking, Director Ross, that, wow, Dr. Brown's going to be busy.
I know, right?
go talk with everybody about all the things. No, but I think an update on that once that role gets up and running would be really helpful.
Maybe some lessons on how to say ombudsperson.
Yeah, I'm going to need that. Just some private tutoring. Thank you.
Okay, well, I thank you for your time, and we look forward to providing these workshop-based opportunities to further everyone's learning and kind of understand the meat or the essence of lots of these challenges. And I look forward to just figuring out what I need to do in my role to concentrate intentionally in each of these work streams so that we can see progress.
Well, thank you for the
Thank you.
thoughtful goals and presentation and conversation. And, you know, this came up naturally. And through the exercise that you had us do here with identifying areas that we wanted to see included, that these goals are really representative of a lot of the concerns that we've heard from our constituents and that we've brought to this table. Feels very holistic. And yeah, these workshops will give us a chance to kind of check in and learn how things are going. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then just operationally, Dr. Mary Perry Reed's goals will appear on the consent calendar at our next meeting. So we won't have another discussion about them, but they'll appear on consent. So speak now or forever hold your peace. No, if you have any input, you can give that now or talk to Dr. Mary Perry Reed. It's not just ombudsman, now it's creeping into everything with Dr. Mary Perry Reed in the interim.
I actually do have one final question kind of then before we leave this topic. Do you have a moment to speak about how you set your goals and
How I set these specific goals? Because we spend all of our Wednesday mornings engaging in progress monitoring against those deliverables in each of the 3 goal areas, I'm very familiar with all of the projects in the 3 goal areas, and then I just start to think about, it's kind of like, as a school leader, you have to think about what are the most important levers you have to pull to kind of move your school from like this point to this point. And so as a system leader, I think, well, like, what are the 4 or 5 most important things in each of these 3 areas that if I can move these things or partner with my colleagues to make movement or progress in these areas, then good change will happen. People will be happy. They're observable. I don't know, either like they're observable systems or like services that impact the quality of our students' experiences, our staff experiences. So it was some deep thinking.
yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else before we leave this item? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next workshop agenda item, which is the 24-25 school year calendar. Oh, no, it is happening. Ombudsman has broken my brain for the evening, hopefully just for the evening. Oh, my gosh. Okay. And we will welcome Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot to the table.
Good evening. I hope the language issues are not catchy. I will do my best to walk you through the 24-25 calendar draft. We've been working on this for period of time and pulling together common sets of information that are necessary to pull together some of the frameworks. And then from the frameworks where we move into some of the drafting, and the drafting work is underway right now. And different calendars, different years present different sets of challenges. What we try to do with you is look at some of the basic parameters. Some of those basic parameters include ending as early as we can in June, trying to find some of the ways in which we can keep most of the weeks consistent without interruptions as much as possible. Making sure that we find the balance of including time for professional development and building that within the confines of the calendar. Trying to balance out the quarter system that we have within the terms at the high school level, looking at what those semester terms look like, and then varied conferencing schedules that happen throughout the course of the year at each educational level that we have. Then we also look at where holidays fall, so we can be mindful of that impact within the calendar. We try to put all of that together, and then look at the ever-present question of, are we able to start before or after Labor Day? In part dependent on the state statute that requires us to have 400,000 at one building to consider in construction projects, to be able to ask the question of whether it would be beneficial for us to start before Labor Day or after Labor Day. So all of that going into the work that's here, you do have in front of you one of the first attempts that we have as we start to work this together. We pulled together a collaborative team to come up with some of the sets of information, knowing these parameters, and then we share all of this information with our Education Association. They go back and they work on it collectively as Education Association governing body. They're in the process with that right now. We bring that in front with you so that you can provide additional input, and then we put it in front of the community for 2 reads so that there are additional opportunities for community members to add any additional considerations that we may not have at the present time. Brief summary, I think I did it without a little bit of the linguistic kind of tongue-tiedness, but I am here right now to answer any questions that you have, highlight any components that are here right now. And of course, as I've mentioned, this is in draft. Our first read presentation we hope to have in front of you for the November 28th board meeting, and then we would in the December look to have this finalized so that we can get it out, publish it, put it in front of our community so that plans for next school year can be made. Generally, I should also say that we look at the 25-26 school year at the same time. In the interest of time, as we've been working, we wanted to get the 24-25 out first because that's what people are using right now for their planning. We are also in process and working the 25-26. That is taking a little bit of additional time. We wanted to focus on this first, get this done, and then after we complete this, we'll move to the 25-26. Specifically, as we think about board transition, we wanted to have 24-25 under your consideration right now. And then as we think where that transition might fall, we thought, hey, good opportunity to train new folks in for those that are coming aboard who haven't done this before and give them the opportunity to learn along the way for 25-26. So there you are.
You're such a show-off with your accurate pronunciation of everything.
I tried to do so intently. Did you see me looking up, making sure I didn't make any mistakes?
I just had some questions around, for some context.
Certainly.
Because I did get some, or I think we all did, get some feedback when we made, I think, very necessary changes to our school calendar about the instructional days that are for students. So I know that we are governed by the state as to how many instructional days we have to have as a school district. So could you discuss, have we met that? How far above are we?
Yep. So I think a great way to look at that is the first page of the documentation that we provided. We do go through, and the state requires 2 thresholds. The first one is 165 instructional days. So you'll see that number of instructional days met there when we look at for student requirements, that those elements are considered. So 165 is the minimum statutory requirement. In addition to the number of days that are required, there are additional requirements that vary at each educational level for instructional hours. The instructional hours we also look at in our calculations, and those are dependent on the start times, end times of each day, and then the length of period of classes and passing time and lunch. And 1,020 is required at the secondary level, 935 basically at the elementary level.
And so I do notice there are different total days for the different levels.
Yep.
Is there reasoning behind that, or?
Absolutely. It's a function of the way in which the conferencing works. If you think about having 4 terms at the high school, having a conference for each term, that then builds itself into that model. When you look at an elementary model that has multiple days of conferencing twice a year, that looks different than the middle level, where the middle level has maybe a day and is based more on a semester concept within its course delivery, within its schedule. Those are some basic elements of really kind of what drives that difference with some of the days.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nick, with the, like, I think they're called like digital learning days at the high school. Those are considered days in school, even if the students are not in school physically, correct?
Correct. That's the basic read that we have as we've checked with the Minnesota Department of Education. We are authorized as a online provider. So we know through that authorization, through the work that we've been doing, that also contributes to the way in which those days are considered. You will see that they are not built into this framework because this framework assumes the day. What it does not assume is the type of delivery on that day, but it does assume the instructional hour for the calculation to make sure that we meet those thresholds.
So similarly then, I mean, the fact that the high school is sitting at 166 days and the threshold is 165, we don't worry about snow days because with our new model, we're now planning snow days to be asynchronous or digital learning days.
Correct. The difficulty gets in if we go beyond 5 snow days per se. We hit 5 snow days when we had cold days where the governor closed for very frigid temperatures once within like the past 2 or 3 decades where we've hit 5 days, but 5 days is the threshold. If we were to go beyond 5 and were we to fall below 165, we would be in a space where we might have to do a makeup, depending on anything that might happen at the legislature to do any waivers, which they've done in the past. And we would certainly look at amending the calendar in whatever context we could to look and see in a meet and confer with our education association how we would do that.
Okay. The calendar looks strikingly similar to this year's.
Correct. Some years you get that, and some years, you know, it just lines up where you're like, wow, there are 40 days in term 1, 42 in term 2, 41 in term 3, and 44 in term 4, which educators like because usually 4th term, especially at the high school, has a bunch of things happening. So sometimes they line up this way. 25, 26 doesn't line up this way. So
I was going to say like breaks at the same time, like Yom Kippur's on a weekend. There's just a lot of things that came together that look super similar.
yeah, very similar. And 24, 25, you know, I mean, that was part of the conversation. The only challenge with 24, 25, depending on, and sometimes we get individuals who prefer to start before Labor Day, some prefer after. I mean, it's a cross-section, of course. But we don't have any buildings, as I mentioned this time around, that have that $400,000 threshold. So we have to start after Labor Day. We don't have that choice in this calendar, which has been different than previous times. So that's why you don't see multiple drafts where one starts before and one starts after. We just didn't have the ability to do it this time. But fortunately, as you've identified, this one pretty much mirrors people's expectations for what they had this year.
But you're saying 25, 26 is going to be a fun one.
It's a little different.
Well, let's just get some projects at one of the schools.
Yeah,
No.
I move that we,
So process-wise, you said that our Hopkins Education Association has a copy of this right now. They're reviewing it. And then you'll take our input here, which has pretty much been like, okay, looks good. Combine it with theirs, bring this back in first read on the 28th,
Correct.
put it out to the community, and then bring it back on second read on the 12th, on December 12th.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so you'll see the counts. We've tried to provide you with materials that kind of just hit all of those parameters, show you the individual components that go into it. One is a teacher calendar, the other is the elementary, of course, the middle, and then with the high school, you have all of those just as working documents. As you see some materials, obviously this is in preparation in the workshop here for the board conversation on the 28th. And obviously, if there are additional, and no matter how many times we look at this, you can count 185, you can count 185, and then suddenly you find something that you thought you had seen, but then you suddenly discover that you weren't right with what you thought was right. So we try to look at it as many times as we can and get it in multiple hands so that when we do put it all together, it's ready to go and it's comprehensive and we can get it out and feel fairly confident that what we have in front of our community is where we will land as we look at 24, 25.
And Nick, I feel like our middle school teachers had some specific ideas around PD and collaboration. Do you know if our HEA president will make sure that all the building level union reps will see this and get
Yep.
input from teachers?
They did. They started that work on Monday.
Okay.
And they have been working collectively on making sure that various working groups are looking at exactly that, to
Okay.
build that into the review as they look at the options that are in front here.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Is the teacher calendar, it's numbered 1 through 180, but then is that the 5 workshop days before
Correct.
the start of the school year? Is the 185?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have a second to talk about kind of the vision of digital learning days? It's a little right turn away from our calendar discussion.
Yeah,
If
I
we do
mean,
have that time, but.
go ahead.
Well, it is my understanding that the high school teachers worked with their union leaders and specifically requested regular opportunities to engage in professional development and collaborative time to, think about things like ensuring a rigorous experience for all students, aligning instructional practices to the Hopkins Learning Framework, and like a whole host of instructional things. And because it was a request that came specifically from teachers, then the high school administration team began working with district leaders to flesh out, okay, well, what would have to be true within our system to allow this to happen. And we did want to support our teachers in this request, knowing that it would result in 9 days students learning at home. And so a couple things. One, we all agreed that any student can make a decision to come to school for in-person support on any of those days. And I think a second shared commitment was that the 4 instructional coaches at the high school would work with teachers to ensure that the quality of that synchronous and asynchronous learning on those digital learning days was very strong. Like we said, imagine that the whole family is sort of walking through the living room as the student is engaging online. What are they seeing? Let's make sure that the quality of those digital learning experiences is strong. And then I think a third thing, I was talking with a couple of families who said they love those days because on those days they've scheduled their doctor's visits, they've already visited colleges, right? So giving families the flexibility of, scheduling those kinds of experiences on those days. Anything more that you would add to that?
The other item that I would add particular to this year was the transition and the ability of staff as they're working within new spaces with brand-new people, with each other, the connectedness that we could do this year with this model really lent itself to giving more people to be in the space where we've had significant introductions of new people, new grade levels. The time to work together collaboratively that they never had before. So that was another kind of, I would say, need that the model met. The other discussions that we had was at some point within the implementation to get that feedback, that collective feedback from families, from students, so that we could look at how these were playing out in actuality and use that information to think about how we may be able to look at these into the future. I'd add those pieces, but I think that's kind of about it.
So we should make sure that Dr. Holm works with the high school admin team to put together a family survey, survey for families and students, and staff probably.
Yeah, collectively.
I might like to hear that. I think we heard at the very beginning of the year a little bit of like, what are these things from our families? But since then, I've by and large heard from students, staff, and families that they have been implemented well and have worked out. So thank you.
Well, I think too, so I have a student at the high school, and I think that initially it was communicated that you could opt in or opt out. Like you could go to school and experience your digital learning day there, or do it from a non-disclosed location. And I think that, so you just do what fits for your family, right? If your student needs to be at school in order to engage fully in a digital learning day, then that's where they are.
Great. Anything else on this? Well, thanks to you and the team and our teachers for collaborating on the calendar, and we'll look forward to seeing it in first read on the 28th.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
So that ends our workshop. See you back at the table a little before 7. Thank you.
Where is he?
Just use your theater.
In the Google Meet said they're having trouble hearing.
There we go.
Now I can
Oh,
hear.
now I
can hear.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there we go. Good evening. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is called to order at 7:05 PM. We'd like to welcome our community members who have joined us here in the physical space, as well as folks who are watching via the YouTube live stream. We are going to go around the table and have board members and our superintendent introduce themselves. And then in a few moments, we'll turn it over to our student board reps. So we'll start with Director Ross.
Good evening. My name is Jason Ross. I have 3 kids in the district. All of them go to Tanglin. Specifically, I have 2 fifth graders and 1 second grader. I got it right.
I was going to say, good job.
I hope they're watching.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Khan. I have lived in Hopkins for about 13 years now. Both my kids graduated from Hopkins schools, and they're currently at the University of Minnesota. That's it.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Shannon Andreessen. I am in my first term on the school board, and I have 2 children who attended and currently attend Hopkins Public Schools. I have a sophomore at the high school and a recent graduate who's at the U.
I'm Jen Westmoreland, she, her pronouns. I currently serve as chair of the Hopkins School Board. I am in the middle of my second term. I've been on the board for 6 years. And I am the parent of a Hopkins student who was actually in the room until about 30 seconds ago. They're also a famous actor, so you might know them from their theater work. A student at West Middle School, and because there's a fellow alum in the audience tonight, I am a proud graduate of Hopkins High School. Go class of '97.
Good evening. I'm Superintendent Rhoda Mary Puri-Reed. I am in my 7th year. I have a 6th grader at West and a 10th grader at our high school.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Adams, and I'm wrapping up my 12th year on the school board, and have lived in the district for, I can't remember, 37 years, something like that. And the proud parent of 2 grown adult children who attended Hopkins schools K through 12.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie O'Shea Peterson. I have 6th grader and a 7th grader at North Middle School, and wrapping up my 4th year on the board.
Hello, I am Director Rachel Hartland, and I have 3 children in the district who are in their 8th, 6th, and 4th grade years at a couple of our Hopkins schools. And I have lived in the community in Minnetonka for 7 years now, and I'm proud to be halfway through my first term on the school board.
Great, thank you. So our next agenda item is open agenda. This is one of 2 times during our board meetings when we hear public comment from our community members. This school board believes that public comment is crucial for our implementation of Vision 2031, which is our district's strategic vision. So the public comment time at the beginning of the meeting is reserved for items that are on the agenda, so we can hear comment about those before discussing and voting. And then the public comment time at the end of the meeting is for items that are not on the agenda. You can visit us here in person, fill out a public comment card, and hand it to the chair before the meeting begins if you'd like to comment during either of those periods. Or you can leave a voicemail before the meeting begins, and it will be played during the appropriate comment period. The instructions for how to do all of this are in our board packets that are published before each meeting. They're also in our school board meeting protocols that are on the website. So I received 3 public comment cards this evening. They're all for items that are not on the agenda, and so I'll invite those community members up during our second public comment period at the end of the meeting. So we will move into our reports, and we will start with our student board representatives' reports. We're so excited to welcome a new student board rep to the table tonight.
All right. My name is Grace Riley. I'm one of the 12th grade senior representatives. And then as Chair Westmoreland mentioned, we have found another junior representative. I will let her introduce herself in a moment. And then just a note, we do have one of our reps joining virtually as well. So October 13th was Breast Cancer Awareness Night for football. The players wore pink socks as well as pink ribbons on their jerseys to show support. And then the outdoor adventure camping trip was from October 16th to October 18th. I personally did not go because I am not in that class, but I heard it was an enjoyable time. And then we conducted the annual panorama surveys in Royals Connect on October 24th and October 25th. The early action deadline for seniors was on November 1st, so we are getting those college applications in. And then some of our student board reps met with the Hopkins Educational Foundation to discuss information about the Awesome Fund on October 25th. And that was very kind of eye-opening as to some of the great opportunities that are out there for our clubs and our club leaders at the high school. And then on November 8th, we had our Fall National Intent Signing Day with several of our senior students. They all signed on to D1 or D2 schools, so that is very impressive, and we are super excited to see where they go. And then some of our representatives also attended the SKIP, or Schools and Community in Partnership meeting on November 2nd. And we do have a winter carnival hosted by our student council happening on December 6th. Student board does have a booth there. We plan to have prizes to give out for the winners of our cornhole game. So looking forward to that as well. And that's everything.
Okay. My name is Elif. I'm another senior board representative. I just have a few things to mention today. We had the new term beginning, so we're now in the second term of the school year. This was last week, and classes have been going well. It's always nice to have a fresh start. We have a digital learning day this Thursday, and many know digital learning days are new to this year, and I personally think that there's a lot of benefits to it, especially for our seniors, because it gives us an opportunity to work on college stuff and just kind of recuperate, and I think it helps with everyone's mental health. We have club meetings in action. Earth Club has been active with inviting guest speakers and volunteering. There's a club called Letters of Love, which holds biweekly meetings. They write letters to children in hospitals. And then the club HHS for Choice, which is in partnership with Planned Parenthood. They're having a club meeting this week, which is reflecting on the recent U.S. election results. And then lastly, this was a bit ago, but students in the Propel program delivered spookograms on Halloween. They donated the proceeds to the Twin Cities United Way program called Home for Good.
Okay. Hi, I'm Praise Akinyele. I'm a junior representative for the Student Board program. The first thing I want to report on is the Mayo Clinic School of Health Sciences came to visit our school yesterday for just as a guest speaker, and they talked to the exploration of the medical and health fields, the exploration of the medical and health fields class, and they discussed positions such as respiratory therapists and things like neurophysiology. Yes, okay. Besides that, the career-focused technical classes have been showing a lot of good results, and there's been a lot of engagement with the classes for new programs such as the Certified Nursing Assistant program and other things like engineering and computer programming. I've taken both of those courses and I've really enjoyed them. Besides that, the HOSA Club, it stands for Health Occupation Students of America, has been planning a blood drive for December 22nd. Elif just talked a little bit about club meetings and stuff. Yes, the club culture at HHS has grown a lot since I started going here, and I love it so much. We talked a little about the National Signing Day for seniors for NCAA sports. And then also I wanted to mention some concern around the gender-neutral bathroom conditions. A lot of students have been complaining about the graffiti and things like that. And yes. The HHS Math League also placed second at their first competition of the year.
Fantastic, thank you. And who's on the Google Meet?
Mia.
Hey, hi, Mia.
Hi, okay. Hi, I'm the 11th grade board representative. We haven't met in a while, so my things kind of reach back to our last meet until now. Not recently, but we have taken the PSATs, which many juniors took in order to get the National Merit Scholarship. A lot of students are excited because the scores come out in 2 days, November 16th. Today and tomorrow we have class meetings, and an email sent out for students to pick a teacher who they want to nominate, and the teacher would get awards. And then teachers also received an email choosing which students they wanted to nominate, and that student would also receive an award, and their awards will be hanged up in the mall area once the junior and seniors get their class meetings tomorrow. As Grace touched up on, the LAC, we did meet. One thing that we talked about today was how there's benefits for low-income families at Hopkins, but not a lot of them re-signed up for it because lunch are free this year. Then also the Awesome Fund, we basically talked about how to get words out more to clubs, as though not a lot of clubs are aware of there's this amazing opportunity for them to get money. The 9th and 10th grade orchestra went to DC, and as orchestra, as representing our school, they played. Fall sports ended, and now winter sports are starting. For fall sports, a quick highlight: the swim team got 4th place on sectionals, so yay to them. We currently have a new counselor named Rachel Nelson, who's in charge of 10th and 11th grade. And one of our counselors is back, Miss Litweiler. She was just on maternal leave, and we're glad to have her back. The cafeteria is now selling cookies. for 50 cents, and they started today, so hooray. And then there's a new thing at our school called peer jury, where it's basically students at Hopkins come together and help with restorative justice. We met with a judge, and there was even an attorney there, and we basically sorry, my mind blanked for a sec, but we basically like got our introduction and we got sworn in to make sure that we are always honest, like it is in court. And the whole goal is to have alternate, like for the student that's on like that comes forward to us. The whole goal is for us to help them like change their behavior around and not get the option of going to admin, because what admin like would do would be like suspension, etc. And that's it for my report. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Don't worry about your mind blanking. If you want to watch the workshop, which I know you probably don't, but if you did, you can see me mispronounce ombudsman 4 times. Did you see how I just did it, though?
Ombudsperson.
Oh, that's why I couldn't do it. That's why I couldn't do it, because I was doing the patriarchal version. Okay, ombudsperson. There, I can do it now. That's growth. That's growth. Okay. Questions or comments for our student board reps? Praise, it is wonderful to have you join us. Thank you.
Of course.
Yes, thank you very much. Great. Well, wonderful. I love how you all coordinate and cover different areas that are important for us to know about, and hearing about the work that you're doing in committees, working with the LAC, meeting with the Hopkins Education Foundation to ensure that students and clubs know about the awesome grants. It's great work, so thank you. Next, we'll move on to our superintendent's report with Dr. Mary Peary-Reed.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. And I would love, as we're getting the screen up here, I'd love to recognize Natalia Pusholt, who is our new executive assistant and liaison to the board. So Natalia, thanks for helping present slides. And we'll get started with slide number 10. All right. So as we're getting those up and running, we are 11 weeks into the school year, 2 weeks already into term 2, and there's so much happening in our schools. Amazing teaching and engaging learning for our scholars. You can see on this title slide, Governor Waltz visited Eisenhower Elementary to learn more about voluntary pre-K. Our student board reps talked about National Signing Day. Our culinary students had a competition. There's so many great things happening. Last week, all of our elementary teachers learned about the READ Act during Professional Development Day. Alice Smith had a successful readathon this past Friday. And so as you heard from our students, there's lots of great things happening. I would like to, on behalf of our school district, and of course, our current board members, I would like to congratulate our newly elected school board members who will begin their fresh term in January. So Jiming Zhao, Brooke Roper, and Kai Thompson will join us in January. And then, of course, our very own Vice Chair Andreessen, Shannon Andreessen, was reelected. So congratulations to all of you, and we look forward to working with you. And speaking of the election, our very own Elise Frankhauser worked many hours managing the election and voting process and just making sure that all of what we were doing was in compliance with state regulations. And so, Elise, thank you for truly all of those hours that you put into that process. And on this slide, you'll see a number of partners across the various municipalities who were helpful to us and to Elise in ensuring that our constituents were able to place their vote. So Elise, huge thanks to you. I know it was lots and lots of, many days of absentee voting. Like how many days total? Okay, not that you were counting. So many, many thanks. So on the next few slides are some truly awesome events and learning experiences that have happened across our schools in the months of October and into November. In early October, Kim Smith, who is our brilliant new personalized literacy specialist, she coordinated the first ever teacher mentor appreciation night for the varsity girls soccer program. And she explained that our players had this idea after seeing it first at a St. Michael Albertville game last year. So she put it into place and was so impressed with the players and also with all of the teachers and mentors that the players mentioned had played a big role in their lives. So I just want to thank Kim for coordinating that and just send some praises and kudos to the adults whose names are on that slide. Lots of teachers and coaches playing a significant role in our students' lives. On October 11, Carl Schroeder's high school outdoor adventures students built positive relationships with fifth graders from Tanglin Elementary on the obstacle course. And the high schoolers had a lot of fun working with our fifth graders and reducing their anxiety and overcoming their hesitations and fears. If a couple of years ago, as a leadership team, principals and cabinet, we participated on that course with Mr. Schroeder's help, and it's frightening, right? Some of these, the ladders and the swings, these tires that you see, they are seem like miles into the air. I mean, of course, just maybe 100 or 200 feet, but it's very frightening. So really proud of our high school students who were mentors and also our fifth grade students who pushed their limits in participating on that obstacle course. And it's also fun because some of those high school students used to be Tanglin Tigers, so I'm sure they enjoyed seeing students from their old elementary school and also seeing their former teachers. On October 11, Miss Swigum and our high school orchestra hosted the Young People's Concert there in the mall of the high school. And so it's really not often that our youngest and oldest students blend together in meaningful ways. So these were two examples of that, both on October 11. On October 25, the middle schoolers who led Glen Lake's Accessible Playground fundraising project returned to their elementary school to test out the newly installed equipment. And so as middle schoolers, they won't have the opportunity to play on that equipment every day, but all of their efforts have had a huge impact on the daily recess experiences of current elementary students at Glen Lake. So thank you to those students. In early November, all 9th and 10th grade band and orchestra students were invited to travel to Washington, D.C. for about 5 days. They left, I believe, on a Thursday and came back on a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. Nearly 100 students went on the trip with band director Nora Tycast, orchestra director Allison Swigum, math teacher Brian Swigum, and associate principal Jean Ward. They performed in front of the World War II Memorial and participated in a clinic at George Washington University. Additional highlights included visiting the African American Museum, the American Indian Museum, the Holocaust Museum, and a tour of the U.S. Capitol. Students were also able to see protests on the National Mall, a majority of the major monuments. They went on a dinner and dance cruise on the Potomac and participated in a scavenger hunt through Old Town Alexandria. And as we hopefully all know, being well-traveled is a Hopkins graduate trait. So this experience helps our students move closer to that. Jessica Winnie is Gatewood's student support advocate as well as partnership building extraordinaire. She has been bringing all kinds of partnerships and community organizations into the Gatewood community. She created a partnership with an art space called Tangible Collective. It's a creative art space in Minnesota that is completely devoted to millennial Black thought. They hold spaces where Black thought is valued and encouraged and centered to make it tangible. So representatives from Tangible Creative are at Gatewood on Tuesdays working with a group of fourth grade Black scholars. They will design and paint a mural for the school, and then recently those students went on a field trip to St. Paul to visit Tangible Collective's art space, and there are some photos from that experience. And I'm trying to connect these updates with components of our vision or some of our graduate traits. So developing confidence and having a voice are two Hopkins graduate traits that that students are able to acquire through these kinds of experiences. Additionally, cultivating traits like being global and well-traveled is happening when we partner with our Chinese interns from St. Cloud State University. So we have welcomed 3 vibrant postgraduate students from Jilin Normal University in China. They are specializing in language acquisition and K-12 education in their studies, and these interns have been injecting a dose of authenticity into our immersion programming and Chinese world classes at West Middle School. So a warm welcome to our Chinese interns. I would like to briefly shift from our celebrations to update on some of the challenges that we've been tackling as system leaders and school staff. So first, just some updates in transportation, and we had a couple moments during the workshop to talk about the improvements that we're making in transportation. We have been able to ensure routing for all of our students. Most students who submit a new request, maybe within either they're new to us or they have an address change, are receiving transportation within that 3 to 5 day window of time, which is typical. A burst of higher enrollment or higher mobility with some families might result in lengthier turnaround time. Currently, what's being reported is that our driver retention is fairly strong so far into the year. We have met about 3 times as a group of leaders to apply our lab operating system, which is our mechanism for gaining deeper understanding in some of our more entrenched problems. We've applied the lab operating system to better understand what's getting in the way of quality service to McKinney-Vento students and students who have foster placements. But overall, wanted to report that our transportation teams are working hard to build these processes that do require us accommodating growing enrollment. So thanks to the team for providing that update. I also wanted to talk about class size, very specifically at the secondary level for a moment here. It has been determined that our elementary school teachers do not have concerns with class size. So again, these higher numbers and of adult to student ratios, the concerns about those are concentrated at our secondary level. In us wanting to closely know our data, but also to respond to a request from the Hopkins Education Association, which is our teacher union, we have pulled data that shows how many students are rostered and also in average attendance for each secondary course. These numbers do not include special education classes, PSEO, teaching assistants, and the advisories or Royals Connect or WIN. And these are also reflective for Term 2 classes. So as you can see, the breakdown with the number, the raw number, and the percent of sections that are below 25 students, the percent of sections that are between 25 and 30, and then 31 to 35 students. And then what we're concerned with is the number of sections that have between 36 and 39 students rostered and or showing up. But what teachers have explained is that, you know, even if there are a couple of absent kids for the day, teachers are still responsible for making sure those kids are getting educated and receiving their homework, so they want to be thoughtful about the entire roster. So that's what those numbers reflect, and we've been partnering with our teachers and union leaders, with Director Chapanduka and our finance team to identify extra resources to improve these ratios. This support has been identified as the possibilities include creating a new section here or there, whatever the master schedule can absorb or take on, compensating teachers for overages, hiring instructional paraprofessionals to push in support for concerning classes, and then one that's coming up at the negotiating table is providing a stipend to all teachers with rosters over a predetermined threshold. I shared we have quarterly meetings with representatives from all of our unions, our 9 bargaining units, and as I shared with union leaders yesterday, we do share the concern for teachers who feel that they're in an untenable situation. Teachers have wanted us to understand that it's not always about the number, it's also about how large the space is and also the needs of those students who are in that course. And so we've had a couple of listening sessions, and we're really trying to do what we can to both partner with our teachers, provide a good listening ear, but also be concrete and responsive with resources that are identified as being available to help. And we'll move to the next slide. The next, and sorry for the length of this, I think I just have maybe 4 more slides. So I wanted to close with some information about learning and achievement. Obviously, as a school district, teaching and learning is our most important body of work, right? So first, I wanted to introduce to you Zoe Lipschultz and Landon Herring. Do you all know if I pronounced Zoe's name right? Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. And they have been named as our National Merit semifinalists. So there are about 16,000 high school students across the country vying for a coveted National Merit Scholarship this year. And Zoe and Landon will be notified in February if they're selected as finalists. So congratulations to them for making it this far. And of course, in order to qualify with national merit status, you have to have really strong critical thinking, reading comprehension, being able to read and analyze and interpret complex text. And these skills all start at the primary grade level. So we're really pleased to share strong results from letters training. So currently, nearly 80% of our K-2 teachers are letters trained, and that's training around the science of reading and teaching based on science of reading. And so we're excited to share these preliminary results. Our data team analyzed spring 23 FastBridge scores by letters trained teachers, and we're thrilled to see that the spring growth scores significantly differed between letters trained and non-letters trained classrooms, with growth scores significantly more favorable for letters trained teachers. So this letters training is making a difference, and I do want to thank all of our all of the members of our Innovation Design and Learning team, Director Ertl, who makes sure that this happens in a systematized way, and of course, thank all of our K-2 teachers, because it does require approximately 90 hours of their time during a school year. So it's a huge learning investment, but it's paying off. And then also on the other end, on the older scholar end, pleased to share strong advanced placement data from last year. We had more than 700 high schoolers taking one or more AP courses, and more than 800 exams taken that spring into early summer, with 60% of students receiving a 3 or higher. And there are lots of colleges and universities who accept 3, 4s, and 5s and provide college credit in return. So wonderful learning achievement happening throughout our system, and can't do it without our amazing teachers, which means we have to work hard to support them now and moving forward. I'd like to end with remembering our multi-learning educator, Gina Snell. She was with us for 16 years in Hopkins, primarily at North, spent some time at a couple of our other schools. She has colleagues across the district because she is a teacher of our students learning English. And she was a wonderful, kind person. Her death has impacted our staff and students in a tremendous way. Services to remember and celebrate Gina are happening at 3 o'clock this Thursday, so just in a couple of days here. And perhaps we can take just a brief moment of silence to remember her, to think about her. And if you knew Gina, you knew how lovely she was, and our deepest condolences to you and also to her family and friends for that loss, for the loss of Gina's life. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any board member comments or questions for Dr. Mary Perry Reed? Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, I would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to our treasurer's report with Treasurer Adams.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. Expenses of note this time, well, this report covers the entire month of October, since we haven't met since early October. But we noted $35,700 for a site license for IXL Math Learning Tool. It's a software product that we use for math enrichment. $1,800 for 7 evening consulting engagements for the high school drumline, which I thought was interesting. $6,600 to Diacon Consulting for various school security activities. We're still trying to refine our security profile with the district. $99,500 for ERP consulting, as we're putting in our new ERP system. That was spread across 2 vendors. $156,000 approximately for site prep and construction for our new certified nursing assistant program at the high school. We had a chance as a board to view this new space, and it's quite impressive. So we're looking forward to having that as a part of our curriculum in the coming years. Then $680 for a software license for Typing Club. I don't know what Typing Club is. If it's a product or if it's an actual club. Do our high schoolers know?
It is an actual club.
Typing. I have to say, that was the most useful class I took in high school. I had no idea that the world was going to be controlled by keyboards at that time.
QWERTY forever.
Yeah. And finally, $310 for 31 students to attend the Christmas Carol at the Guthrie coming up this in December. So with that, I move that we approve total disbursements in the amount of $4,179,682.61 for the period of September 29, 2023 through November 7th, 2023.
I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report. Is there a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Treasurer Adams. We'll now move on to new business. Our first agenda item is policies and first read. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Andreessen, who chairs our monitoring committee that crafts and reviews policies, and we'll invite Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot to the table.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. You'll see before you some policies that the monitoring committee has reviewed. In particular of note, well, just some general context, we are recommending, the monitoring committee is recommending that we need to strike out our concessions policy as it is no longer applicable according to feedback we've gotten from, I believe it's MDE. And then our license status is a statute-driven changes, and what I'm particularly excited about is the monitoring committee delivering on another part of our educational equal access policy, and this one is around non-discrimination of students based on national origin or immigration status. And with that, I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot for a lot more detail.
Most certainly. And we do have individuals here to assist as well through the virtual link, and I want to make sure maybe we can be mindful of that and possibly start with policy 858, which is our concessions policy. And the work that really came from this was in part notification from the Minnesota Department of Education in the work that they do to review nutrition programs, and as part of that review, they did identify that some of the changes in the federal legislation, of course, which are directly related to the state requirements, did necessitate a change into what we previously had done within our concessions policy. So Tanya and Andrea are here. I just want to make sure that for both of them we can acknowledge that and make sure, greetings, Tanya. And Andrea, I believe you're here as well, correct?
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having us.
Excellent, great. Glad to have both of you. And you probably better than I can probably talk a little bit about the specific change that was required, and then we can talk a little bit after that in particular, but maybe giving the board a little context about what we learned from MDE related to the present policy.
Sure, I can do that. So when we had our review this past, oh my gosh, when was it? This spring, I guess. They identified that one of the ways we're doing our concessions isn't something that we are supposed to be doing as a process. So I guess there was a memo back in 2014 that requires all revenue from the sale of non-program foods to accrue to the nonprofit school food service account. So non-program foods is defined as food sold in a school at any time or location on the school campus, other than reimbursable meals purchased using funds from the nonprofit school food service account. So right now, we partner with different partners like parent groups, booster clubs, student groups, and we actually share the revenue with them. And right now, we are no longer allowed to share that revenue. So we have to look at how we're going to do concessions going forward. And one of the things that I had recommended is that we allow a group that might be still interested in doing concessions take over operation. And we can still partner with those groups by maybe helping them secure like products through our existing vendors. But going forward, probably the best way, and what most districts do, is they have other groups operate concessions under their own license, so that it would not be under the license of student nutrition. So we can talk more about that. But that's kind of the overview. We need to start looking at a different process and how we're going to do that.
So with that, thank you for that background, Andrea, and I think that is hopefully why you can see at least our concessions policy. What we have done is we've really removed that so that we can show forward that we are looking at different ways of delivering the opportunities that exist. So, for example, the requirements that we reviewed and discussed with Director Chapanduka, with Andrea as well, really are now focused on how we can provide sets of services and products in a way that are compliant. So for example, some of the ways that we can look at it, for example, if it's an evening school carnival, those kinds of activities, is that as long as the nutrition services are either ordering, charging, providing labor in that context, as long as those services are paid for and in that area, then anything that is sold by the organization above and beyond can be taken by the organization as long as the services and the products are covered. Those are certainly kinds of arrangements that we can work toward. What we're certainly looking at now is the way that we can operationalize that, how we can look at making sure that when groups use space, that we are accommodating to the best that we can, but that the revenue is flowing either to the district fully or the revenue is flowing fully to the organization that is sponsoring. There again, as was mentioned, requiring the ServSafe or other license that would be required to be operational for that to occur. So that's a little bit of the logistic that we're trying to work through, but in essence, that's why we wanted to make sure that you understood that the past policy that we had with 858 does need to be removed, and what we will be doing when we move forward is working through finalizing what these actions can be and then bringing forward additional information for you. Andrea, Tanya, did I miss anything there?
Well, I did want to make sure that everyone knows what it means to be licensed or not, and it really depends on what you're going to be serving. So some school concession stands are exempt from future licensings and inspections if they serve only commercially prepared products, not potentially hazardous foods. So some of those examples are canned soda, baked chips, or wrapped candy. Now, if we have any groups that want to serve hot dogs, hamburgers, ice cream, that kind of thing, they're going to have to be fully licensed on their own and have someone who can follow through with that. So that's kind of the difference in what they would need for licensing, depending on what they're serving. I don't know, Tanya, if you'd like to add anything to that.
Nope, I think you pretty much covered it. So pretty much everything that is pre-packaged and bought at a reputable vendor should be safe, but anything hot or cooked needs to be licensed.
So operationally, all of this would be addressed through the contract process with the vendor. I'm curious, are you anticipating that we'll put a whole new policy in place around concessions? Or will this mostly kind of live in the operational contract realm?
For now, I think in part of our conversation is getting it operationally functional and forward is step one, knowing that there are some of those specific changes. And that's where we're focused on right now. And then, of course, as we have that operational practice, then we'd come back. This isn't a required policy. It's, you know, as you can tell from the nomenclature, it's one that we've adopted for clarity and transparency with our community. So our goal is to make sure that we have the information available as individual organizations come forward looking either to utilize space, and the requirements of that have been mentioned, that if there are any specific concessions that are looked to, that we have that information available for groups utilizing the space, and that we think about how we partner with existing partnerships that we have to make sure that we can continue those partnerships in ways that are compliant moving forward. So once we get that kind of, you know, focused and feet on the ground, then we probably will come forward or at least review that with the monitoring committee about what the next step would be.
Makes sense, thanks.
Chair Westmoreland.
And I can add, I'm sorry, I can add to that. When I looked out at other districts to see what they do, and the other districts that actually have like booster clubs or other groups take over over concessions, they don't really per se have a policy, but of course, you know, we can always come up with a guidance document, so we can do something like that to make sure that the groups know exactly what needs to be done.
Director Adams.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As a former president of a girls hockey booster club, I know that the concession stand was a big revenue generator for the booster club. Have you had any feedback from booster clubs as to the impact on their operations?
Well, I think depending on how this really transforms itself, depending on the way that the booster club would choose to operate, more of the revenue actually would flow depending on the way that a booster club chooses to come into the space.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we've been looking at. If we give, obviously, just listening to what you listened to this evening, if there are those prepackaged items, if there are those kinds of limitations that booster clubs want to utilize, those are available to them. If they would want to look at different kinds of even different kinds of serving components, that's what we would partner with in making sure that booster clubs knew what those requirements were so that if they wanted to pursue that, they could and could assume 100% of the total operation as well as the total revenue. So there are multiple opportunities for ways for all organizations to really kind of interact. It's just making sure that, like Andrea just mentioned, that we have that guidance put together so that, you know, spaces know how to do that appropriately.
So for any hot items, it sounds like you'd have to have a licensed vendor.
Yep, I believe so. I don't want to speak for Andrea.
You would have to get a special event license through the city that the school is located in.
Oh, okay. So City of Minnetonka would license for concessions at
school.
the high school. Right.
Hennepin County would do Eisenhower and Meadowbrook. So, or they can, because that's the question is, would it have to be by group or how would that be?
Yeah. Am I still going to be able to get popcorn at the basketball game? That's my concern.
At this point, we have the winter season set up and ready to go as we have done in the past. We haven't made changes.
All right. Thank you, Tanya.
Asking the tough questions. Great. Any further questions on this policy or comments?
Well, one clarification, Chair Westmoreland. We've been non-compliant since 2014. Is that what I understand?
Tanya, Andrea?
To our
that's-
surprise, yes.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. We were just discussing that today, actually, because when I was in Jordan as a director, I mean, I had one or, I think, two different reviews I went through, and this never came up.
Yeah.
And I know that Barb had these same reviews as well. So it almost seems like it was something that kind of got a little buried, and then someone found it again. And I've been reaching out to other director friends, and they also, this year, are going through the same process. So it might be
Really?
just something that's on their radar a little bit more, maybe.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Might I ask, Chair Westmoreland, is there a timeline for, like, do we know which group of activities this will impact? And a plan for communicating these new guidelines to those people?
I think that's what we're working on right now after this evening, is to generate, as we've mentioned, like Tanya said, the winter activities, winter seasons pretty much continue as we have, and then moving forward with that, knowing that that's the step forward that we need to make now that we have the information here to kind of finalize those next steps. That would be what we'd put together.
Will that come back to the board then at some point? Or potentially not if it's not a policy?
If it's not a policy and just a regulatory practice, then we would keep it just within the department.
Okay.
Great, anything else on this policy? Okay, looks like we can move along.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea and Tanya. Appreciate your input and insights as well. The other policies that we have in front this evening, 424 is the licensing policy. Just some modifications that were done with some of the statutory changes. So we have included that information in 424. I'm available for questions on that.
Nick, is this new verbiage or just revised?
It is. The Minnesota legislature added some annual reporting requirements that need to be done by districts to the Professional Educator Licensing and Standard Board. That's what's specific in here, is the statutory requirement of what we now need to report as a district annually through our STAR reporting. And that is presently underway right now.
So in the past, we were not reporting layoffs by race or ethnicity, is that correct?
Correct. This is all new required information.
That's the legislature for you, isn't it? Give us some increase in money, but make new requirements for us.
Dr. Lightfoot, may I ask a question, Chair?
Of course.
The reasons for all teacher resignations and requested leaves of absence, will that look like a short list of predetermined reasons and we check a box, or is it more open-ended and qualitative in nature, requiring us to write?
That's still to kind of be finalized from what we're seeing.
Okay.
Once we have that, then we'll know specifically how they're collecting that.
Okay.
Other questions or comments on this policy? Okay.
Next policy, 534. 534, we made some modifications to the nutrition policy, school meals policy here. The changes are so noted. Questions, concerns on 534?
I don't think we're reviewing that one. I believe it was in the consent.
Oh, in the consent? Got it. I wasn't sure. I saw that on the first read here, so I wanted to make sure we have that. If that's on consent, that's in second read.
So I think we're moving to the non-discrimination of students.
All right.
based
Then the
on-
last one is the non-discrimination of students based on national origin or immigration status policy. This is a new policy, one that does not have a number, as it is a request of the board and the continuance of the work that we've been doing under our equal educational opportunity, looking at the development of policy that is specific to the protected class status that we have identified as individual policy element to bring forward to you for review.
I just want to let the full board know that this was a lot of work on Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot's part, comparing and contrasting different policies that as a model policy, and then bringing it up to our to staff to review that are representative of a wide range of different lived experiences. So just wanted to let that be known.
And we have not,
Your work.
oh, I'm sorry. I do too. And we have not had a policy that's this comprehensive in the past. Is that
Correct.
right?
No,
And
this
so-
is brand new.
So this is brand new. And so this is part of this, this suite of policies that the monitoring committee has been working on. And could you say a little bit about that and how it fits into and with these other policies?
Yeah, these are the set of policies in conjunction with educational opportunity. I believe it's 102. That we identified as needing the protected classes that are listed out in that policy. Some of them have specific policies that address the specific needs and ways in which we can be much more intentional about how we are serving and or protecting that that population of community members. And this was one that did not have any additional policy or wording behind it. And so this is just the next one in our, this is the next one in our efforts to make that policy much more robust and intentional.
Thank you. I think it's really impressive, especially the safe school immigration responses section. And I'm making an assumption that some of these things listed here are already practices we engage in as a district. And I'm wondering, in terms of implementation, what additional training might be needed for staff around these processes.
Sure. Different staff in different capacities. In part of the work that we did was working in conjunction with members of the community, as well as with Immigration Council, as well as local staff who are engaging with families and with students, and looking at how we can collectively, after the policy is passed, look at next steps and what specific elements need to be implemented. As you will see, some response committees and the training that's involved there. And then in addition, as we continually look at the evolving nature of the work that's done under this policy, who else do we need to include in any additional information or response that would be necessary? So, yep.
Great, thank you. Other comments or questions on this policy?
I do have a comment, Chair Westmoreland. I was pleased to see it specifically called out this added language around we will continue non-discrimination practices against any person with a need for language translation services or their English language fluency, because this covers not just people who possibly like more visibly look like they belong to a culture that might use another language, but even to like the deaf culture. And I know we have several teachers and family members that are really impacted by this and face a lot of challenges in their daily life from that exact kind of discrimination. And I like it called out in our policies, so thank you for that work.
Great. Any additional comments or questions on this policy? Thank you to the monitoring committee and the staff and students and community members who consulted on these policies, and Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot. I would look for a motion that the board approve the above policies in first read and that the board direct the administration to prepare the policies for approval in second read at the next meeting as part of the consent calendar.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the policies in first read. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Nick.
We will move on to our next agenda item. I'll invite Director Chapanduka to the table so we can canvass our election results. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Mary Perry Reed.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. So this board action is related to the school board election that was held last Tuesday, November 7, to fill the expiring terms of Directors Shannon Andreessen, Steve Adams, Katie Peterson, and Tanya Khan, with Adams, Peterson, and Khan not filing for re-election. And so Director Chapanduka, thanks for joining us, and if you could explain the process for the roll call vote.
Sure. Good evening, Chair Westmoreland. Good evening, Dr. Mary Perry and respective board members. Yeah, so we are actually required by state statute to canvass the board elections. As you know, on November 7, the school board elections were held, and this is the first time the district is actually independently run the elections. Usually we run these elections in partnership with cities, and about 2 or 3 years ago there was a provision in the law which actually exempted cities to partner with school district in a year when they are not really running elections. So first of all, I want to thank Alice Frankenhauser. She has been working tirelessly for the last 2 years, learning election laws, partnering with other entities, for the most part with Wayzata School District and Hennepin County, to get us to where we are. So we are actually required to call out the number of votes on the candidates who ran for the elections, and then through the resolution, the board will actually endorse the election results and make them official. And we do have the resolution in the board packet. So, as mentioned by the superintendent, the election was to fill expiring terms for Directors Shannon Andreessen, Director Steve Adams, Director Katie Peterson, Director Tanya Khan, and Director Adams, Director Peterson, and Director Khan did not file for re-election. And the results are supposed to be canvassed. We had 4 candidates who actually were on the ballot box. We have candidate Jiming Zhao with 6,594 votes. Candidate Brooke N. Roper with 6,374 votes. Candidate Shannon Andreessen with 6,378 votes. Candidate Kai Thompson with 5,924 votes. And we had about 383 votes which were write-in. So that being said, the board will be requested to approve the results of the election conducted on November 7, 2023, by adopting the proposed resolution canvassing the return of votes for the school board election for the 4 candidates who ran through the elections.
Thank you very much, Director Chapanduka. So I would look for a motion that the board approve the results of the school board election conducted on November 7th, 2023 by adopting the proposed resolution canvassing returns of votes of the school district general election.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any discussion?
I have a procedural question.
Yes.
Can I vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll turn it over to Clerk Ross for the roll call vote.
Chair Westmoreland,
Aye.
Vice Chair Andreessen,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Khan,
Aye.
Director Hartland,
Aye.
Director Ross. Aye. Oh,
Thank-
Treasurer Adams, sorry.
Aye.
Thank you, Clerk Ross. We have 7 ayes, 0 nays. The motion carries. Thank you very much, Director Chapanduka.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move into our board member reports. Steve. You've been called on, Director
I've been called
Adams.
on?
Yes.
Oh, well.
Director Khan
In
just
that
called on
case-
you.
On October 6th, I attended AMSD, as I normally do, but this time with Director Hartland, who went along, and the topic that day was on the new Pellsby licensing rules, which was quite interesting. October 11th, I met with Torero and Jason and Rachel regarding the treasurer's responsibilities, to see if I could evince any kind of interest in someone taking over that job. On October 25th, I attended a meeting on restorative justice conducted here at Eisenhower by the Hopkins Race and Equity Initiative. And then November 3rd, again attended AMSD with Director Hartland. And this time the topic was the CARI study. CARI is a think tank at the University of Minnesota that looks at various educational issues. And their most recent study was on principals in Minnesota. How important are they? How do they like their jobs? What kind of prep is done for them? A whole raft of issues regarding Minnesota principals. And then on November 9th, I attended the AMSD conference at the Marriott Northwest. It was very interesting. The topic was artificial intelligence and how it might relate to education. The kickoff speaker was John Fila of District 287, who's done a lot of work with artificial intelligence, and found out there's a whole raft of products out there that incorporate artificial intelligence, and they all seem to do different things. So it was a very educational time. However, as my fellow director Andreessen pointed out, how are boards going to use this information? And I thought about that, and I'm not really sure why. But it was good background information. And then, of course, the regular LEC and student LEC meetings that we have every week or every other week, I attended. So it was a full month.
Thank you, Director Adams.
Sure.
Chair Westmoreland?
Yes. Director Hartland.
I will go after Treasurer Adams, since several of my items overlap with his, and I won't repeat them. We are both members of the Legislative Action Coalition, and so we have done some work over this past month, meeting with our student board representatives, including Praise, the new person, as we work together to plan our annual legislator breakfast, where we discuss and highlight issues that pertain to our district, and also some of our strengths and the things that are going really well. And the date for that is not set in stone just yet, but it is something that we are continuing to work on, and we are contemplating what changes in that committee might be in our fairly immediate pipeline, as we have some members changing roles in the school board. Because we have some new board members coming to join our group in January, then I have worked at least a little bit with student board reps and also with Chair Westmoreland discussing kind of an onboarding document, sort of a central source of truth for these new people who are about to be to feel a little bit in over their heads for the next couple of months. This board attended a district tour which focused on the virtual EDU and help programs at the Hopkins East building and also the new CNA program and facility at the high school, all of which were very beautiful and very impressive to see. Another thing that I've been working on within our district is assisting with our middle school and a little bit with our elementary school robotics programs. And through those programs have been in contact with HEF, the Hopkins Education Foundation, and they were kind enough to award those programs with almost $3,100 worth of grant money. And so I want to take just a moment to highlight the incredibly important work that HEF does for the district and all of the activities that happen under our building or under our building's roofs. And we had 2 staff members from HEF come and visit the program and personally present us with a check. And the robotics team is going to be doing a demonstration. I believe it's at Tanglin, but now that I am having to say that out loud, I'm doubting myself. It's either at Tanglin or at the high school on Saturday, December 2nd, and that will be a really cool demonstration of what those teams have been working on.
Thank you. Chair Westmoreland.
Yes, Director Khan.
I would like to say that I have been subbing in our school district. It has been so much fun, and I really get to enjoy being in elementary classrooms because my kids told me I shouldn't go to high school yet. Also, Donna Adams, Steve Adams' wife, inspired me to renew my license as a substitute teacher. And she said that, our schools really need subs. And so I'm so happy that I have been going to many different locations, mostly in our elementary level, and just hopping through all different grade levels and really appreciating the hard work that our teachers do every day. It's been really challenging to get students to readjust to what classroom behavior should be. And not that they should be completely controlled or whatever at every moment, but, just to kind of rein them in after COVID and get them to really focus on learning what has been a challenge. And, you can still see that a lot of students are still getting used to being in a classroom. And I really appreciate how hard our teachers have been working to make sure that our students are learning in the best possible manner they can, along with all the distractions of, computers and iPads, et cetera. It's amazing that students are able to focus. So kudos to all our amazing teachers in our school district. And yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm so grateful that I can do this work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Director Khan.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I know the sound of silence. Well, I wanted to congratulate and welcome our new board colleagues who will be joining us in January. Vice Chair Andreessen and I are working on an onboarding process for you. Director Hartland referenced a document that has already been shared with you, and we look forward to a series of meetings and then inviting you into some trainings outside the district as well to get you prepared. So our community is very fortunate that you have stepped up to serve, and looking forward to serving alongside of you. So we will move into our second public comment period. This is for items not on the agenda. And I received 3 public comment cards before the meeting began, so I'll be inviting those community members, one at a time, or in one case, 2 at a time, up to the table. I'm going to read the guidelines for public comment. You can see that we have a timer that's up on the screen, so each person will have 3 minutes to give your comment. You can see the time ticking down, and then I'll ask you to close at 3 minutes if you have not already done so. Public comment is for input only. Members of the school board will not respond directly to public comments that are made at this meeting. No specific action will be taken at this meeting in response to comments that are made or issues that are raised during the public comment period related to items not on the agenda. If the board determines that action is appropriate, that action will occur at a future board meeting. If you've left your contact information on the comment card, a district representative may follow up with you after the meeting. I will recognize 1 speaker at a time. Only those speakers who are recognized will be permitted to speak. Individuals who interfere with or interrupt speakers, the board, or the proceedings may be asked to leave. Personal attacks on any individual, including any other speaker during the public comment section, are unacceptable, as are obscenities or profanity. Persistence in making such remarks will end the individual's opportunity to address the board and may result in the individual being directed to leave. I will rule out of order any statement that would violate state or federal law, school board policy, or the privacy rights of an individual. Minnesota's open meeting law prohibits the discussion of private educational data during an open meeting. Accordingly, during the public comment session, no person may discuss private educational data on an identifiable student. The open meeting law also requires the board to close a meeting for preliminary consideration of allegations against an employee. Accordingly, community members who have concerns about an employee or want to file a complaint or allegations against an employee are encouraged to contact the superintendent directly. We ask that you not name an employee during your comments, meaning state their name. Repeated violations of these time, place, and manner restrictions may also lead to the meeting being briefly recessed. Community members will have an opportunity to be heard within the limits of the law and subject to the time, place, and manner restrictions above. Thank you for participating in public comment this evening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to all of that. And I would like to invite Angela Sanduck to the table. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome.
First of all, thank you very much for having me here. I want to start off with the fact that I love Hopkins, and the reason I'm here is just to help bring awareness to the program that brought me to Hopkins, which is the Juntos program. It was spoke so highly of back in the day when we had our daughter in the Spanish immersion path. And my concern bringing it to the board now is only because I can't help but feel that there's been a gap in communication on the importance of the program, the trajectory of where the program is going, and just the elevated expectation of where we would like to see the education go to for our children. So my simple ask is that the board have an open dialogue with the high school and North Junior High to ensure that there is a much higher elevated, or a much higher focus on what it once was. I think the build of, or the move of the 9th grade class into the high school negatively impacted our 9th graders and there was a lack of communication in my view that that I think could have been fixed and can be fixed. Because there are many families that are coming up now with the Spanish immersion coming through Hopkins, where we want to have that world-class education that we know that Hopkins can provide. And I would be open to questions and additional conversations on how I can help support. Because we're invested in this, and I know many families of the Juntos program are invested in making sure that our scholars have that same experience that past scholars have had at that exceptional level of being part of the Juntos program. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Melody and Max Terrazas to the table.
Well, thank you. I'm Melanie Terrazas, and my son Max is a freshman at the high school, enrolled in the Juntos program. And actually, Max will become the 4th generation Hopkins grad in his family, or our family. So, fun fact, go class of 97. When Max was starting school, we actually didn't live in the district and moved into the Hopkins district for the Juntos program. And at the time, of course, that's a choice you make as a parent for your kid. And to see Max have grown up and really take enormous amount of pride in self-identifying as a Spanish speaker, and to have a program within Hopkins that fosters that is phenomenal. We were blessed with 2 fantastic years at North with some really passionate staff who foster that. And our initial experience at the high school has fallen short a bit. Of course, there's the restructuring of bringing the 9th into the high school building, which comes with its own challenges, certainly, but I am here tonight to impress upon the board the desire to see that elevation, as Angela had just used, and focus on fostering immersion children in these programs in the language that they've dedicated 13 years to. And I think continued communication to both the scholars and the parents is absolutely imperative. You know, there's a lot of questions around the bilingual seal, what the AP courses are doing, how we're shifting college in the schools, where those courses are headed for these last cumulative years. And there's no lack of ideas. I'm just not sure who owns this. And as we talk now about a freshman taking the AP exam, something that he's been working towards and wants very much to achieve highly on, I'll let him speak to his experience so far and how he feels Hopkins is preparing him, and any suggestions or questions you have.
Hi, I'm Max, freshman at the high school, and going into 7th grade, I was kind of didn't know what to expect with the Juntos program, and I was very happy with what I saw when I got to the junior high, and I felt prepared in 8th grade knowing next year, okay, I'm gonna, ready for this AP exam, ready to study for it. And then hearing it getting pushed back to...
Max, we're going to reset the timer to give you your own 3 minutes because there are 2 of you speaking, and I want you to have the time to express yourself.
And then the AP exam got pushed back to sophomore year. And then we heard that we were getting moved up to the high school. So that's a whole, that's a year that we have a brand new set of teachers to teach us. And it was kind of just shocking for all the students. One day we're having, we have a plan on what we're gonna do, our teachers, and we know what the teachers like to see. And then the next day we just have a whole new set of teachers to teach us. And we don't, there's just nothing like, there's not a connection between the teachers and the students. And I feel like it's harder to teach students without having a connection with them, because a lot of the Juntos kids, they're not the most attentive kids, and they like that relationship with their teachers. And if they don't have that, then they're just not going to listen. And the AP exam just will not go well without having a bond with your teacher and someone there who we know will support us and help us be fully prepared for our AP exam. That's all.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, I'd like to invite Dana Reese to the table. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for the time to speak today. I have a child at the high school, one at North Middle School, and my youngest will be a Hopkins Middle School student next year. I'm also a Juntos parent. On October 11th, we received a letter from Dr. Mary Peary Reed in response to the horrific terror attack in Israel on October 7th. It was the first time I let myself exhale after October 7th. The letter from Principal Ballard shortly after was even more meaningful, helping me as a Jewish parent feel safe sending my kid to school. Both statements were exemplary and should be the model for other education institutions that struggle with what to do. Not only did Dr. Mary Peary Reed accurately state the harm and terror of the attack and war, but also allowed space for the diversity of the student body of Hopkins by pledging respect, listening, empathy, and a safe space for all. Principal Ballard took the time to personally reach out to those impacted personally, and also has shown that she is there to listen, learn, and help as she has continued to have meaningful conversations in community. And this has been displayed to students that meet for JSU. I cannot thank Principal Ballard enough for the effort she's made for the high school students. So that brings me to today, 30 days out from the single greatest attack on the Jewish community. And as the war continues, it becomes easy to kind of lose sight of or forget why or how it started, and the collective community, the Jewish community at Hopkins, the trauma, hurt, and terror is still very present. Our Jewish community is closely connected to those living in Israel, and everyone knows somebody who is killed or is now a hostage, still waiting for their safe return. While this might seem like just another current event, for some, many Jewish students are deeply worried about family and friends. And we see anti-Semitism around the world becoming more common where we once felt safe. This is not something that is just around the world. Physical and verbal attacks have happened in the last month within Minneapolis and suburban areas. So thank you for your leadership, for standing for all your students, and for showing how to appropriately respond to such an event. I do ask that your work is not done. The Hopkins vision of equity and inclusion continues to extend to Jewish children, values, and staff moving forward. We need to continue to have conversations that allow the Jewish community to be heard, and professional development training that is presented by JCRC should be made available to all staff at Hopkins schools to help teachers and staff understand both anti-Semitism as well as learn the tools to give a balanced and accurate understanding of the war as well as the history. I would like there to be a clear understanding for staff regarding when it may or may not be appropriate to teach this topic at school. I ask that the school board make it a priority to make sure the same safety, empathy, and professionalism that has been demonstrated by Principal Ballard is echoed in all school buildings by the staff. The focus cannot be reactive, looking at anti-Semitism only from a narrow lens. This would create, we need a culture that aims to prevent all hate. This would help create a healthy learning environment for the Jewish students, but also help all students enter the world with more compassion and understanding for others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of us for joining the meeting this evening. Thank you from all of us to you. Uh-oh, it's ombudsperson all over again. Thank you for joining us tonight, and for taking time to share your thoughts and sitting through an entire meeting before you were able to do so. We very much appreciate it. So with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
I have a motion definitively. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? You never know. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is adjourned at 8:37 PM. Thank you all so much.